Lesson 101, U.S. English. Introduction. Today we are going to explore the differences between American English and British English. While speakers from both countries can generally understand each other without much difficulty, there are some interesting differences in pronunciation, vocabulary, spelling, and even grammar that are worth knowing. English in the USA. English in the United States differs from British English in several ways. The most noticeable difference is pronunciation, but you will also find differences in vocabulary and spelling, as well as a few differences in grammar. For instance, Americans say the fall, while British speakers say autumn. Americans say on the weekend, but British speakers prefer at the weekend. Despite these differences, British and American speakers generally have little trouble understanding each other. American English spelling. American English spelling is usually simpler than British spelling. For example, British English words ending in R and re-end in or and in American English. So we have color instead of color and center instead of center. Many verbs that end in IC in British English end in IS in American English. For example, realize instead of realize. There are also differences in individual words, such as British jewelry becoming jewelry in American English. U.S. words and their British equivalents. Let us now look at some common words that are different in American and British English, starting with travel and street vocabulary. When it comes to vehicles and roads, Americans say gas or gasoline, while the British say petrol. What Americans call a truck is a lorry in Britain. Americans say baggage more often, though this word is also common in British English, especially in air travel. For walking around town, Americans walk on the sidewalk, whereas the British walk on the pavement. To cross the road, Americans use a crosswalk, while the British use a zebra crossing. When waiting, Americans stand in a line, but the British stand in a queue. For time off, Americans take a vacation, but the British take a holiday. When parking, Americans park in a parking lot, while the British use a car park. The storage space at the back of a car is called the trunk in American English and the boot in British English. The front part of the car is the hood in America and the bonnet in Britain. For long-distance roads, Americans drive on a freeway or interstate, while the British drive on a motorway. When buying a ticket, Americans ask for a one-way trip or a round trip, whereas the British ask for a single or a return. Finally, on trains, Americans ride in a railway car, while the British sit in a railway carriage. For underground trains, Americans take the subway, but the British take the underground. Now let us move inside the home and look at household words. Americans throw away garbage or trash, while the British throw away rubbish. To go up and down in a building, Americans take the elevator, but the British take the lift. In the classroom, Americans use an eraser, while the British use a rubber. Americans live in an apartment, whereas the British live in a flat. For storing clothes, Americans use a closet, but the British use a wardrobe. The outdoor area behind a house is a yard in America and a garden in Britain. Americans hang drapes over their windows, while the British hang curtains. For lighting in the dark, Americans use a flashlight, but the British use a torch. When it comes to food, Americans eat French fries, while the British eat chips. To stick things together, Americans use Scotch tape, but the British use sellotape. Americans enjoy a cookie, while the British prefer a biscuit. For sweets, Americans say candy, while the British say sweets. When nature calls, Americans look for the bathroom or restroom, while the British look for the toilet or WC. Babies wear diapers in America and nappies in Britain. And women wear pantyhose in America and tights in Britain. Pronunciation differences. It is also important to note that American and British pronunciations are often different. If you want to hear the differences, you can check the Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary online, where you can listen to both British and American pronunciations of words. Different meanings. Finally, there are some words and phrases that can cause confusion when Americans and British people talk together. This is because the same word can mean something completely different in each version of English. Take the word vest, for example. In British English, a vest is worn under a shirt, but in American English, what Americans call a vest is actually a waistcoat in British English. What Americans call an undershirt is what the British call a vest. Now consider the word pants. In British English, pants are underwear, but in American English, pants are what the British call trousers. Floors in buildings can also be confusing. In British English, the ground floor is the floor at street level, and the first floor is the one above it. But in American English, the first floor is the same as the ground floor, and what Americans call the second floor is what the British call the first floor. And finally, the phrase wash up has different meanings. In British English, to wash up means to wash the dishes. But in American English, to wash up means to wash your hands. So when a British person says they are going to wash up, an American might think they are going to wash their hands, while they are actually going to do the dishes.